Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. So for today's video, I thought I would delve into a topic that I myself actually don't really have a lot of insight into, which doesn't make sense. It'll make sense in a second here. But I wanted to talk about why some doll collectors are completionists. So if you haven't heard that term before, it is just when someone buys every single doll of the line that they collect. So for example, if someone is an LOL-OMG completionist, that means that they buy every single LOL-OMG doll and that's how they collect. It's not just they buy like their absolute favorites, but they will buy literally every one that that particular line that they're a completionist in releases. And obviously I am not like that. I've mentioned that a few times on my channel. I tend to be a little bit pickier with dolls. Some lines I really like a lot more than other lines, but I do tend to be fairly picky, and so I will only buy dolls that really speak to me, but not everyone is like that. And so that's not a judgment whatsoever. I do want to preface that very strongly in this video, that I'm not saying that to be like, oh, I'm superior because I only buy ones I really like, because I don't think that at all. It's just kind of a different style of collecting, but I do only buy my favorites. And so I was curious about what makes people decide to be completionists or why people collect in that fashion, because it's just not something that I understand, you know, it's not something that I do, and I wanted to get some insight on it. So again, there's absolutely no judgment if you are one of these people, if you collect in a completionist manner, because it's fine. If it makes you happy, that's what's important. But it's just interesting to me because it's not something that I do or understand. So I did ask you guys on Instagram and then here on YouTube if you were a completionist, first of all, and then also if you were, why it is that that's how you find joy in collecting. And so I thought today we would go over kind of the most common answers that I got. I just thought it would be kind of fun to delve into a side of collecting that I don't personally experience and kind of highlight some of your answers. It is really funny because most of you overwhelmingly said that you collect the same way that I do, which was just funny, and it does make sense because, like, it makes sense that you would watch videos of people who collect in a similar way to yourself. I know that I do that. I don't really follow a ton of people who are completionists, but I just thought it would be fun to take a look at the other side of things, and I was very grateful for all of the answers I received, because obviously I couldn't make this video without having received those answers. So before we get into it, I do want to say we are about to come up on 5,000 subs on the channel, and I don't know what to do with that information. I am so honored and so grateful that you guys enjoy these silly little videos that I put out, because it's so fun for me to make them, and to see all of you enjoying them means a lot. So one of you guys had requested that I do a Q&A for 5,000 subs. I did one ages ago when I hit 500 subs, and so we're kind of bringing that back for another 5 milestone. So if you have any questions that you want included in that after I hit 5,000, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'll also be making a community post, and I'll be asking on Instagram and TikTok as well. But, you know, if you have any questions because you're seeing this video, go ahead, drop them in the comments, and yeah, I will hopefully be able to answer those. It's going to be a fun little exciting thing, and I do just want to preemptively, again, say thank you. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the reasons that people are completionists. So through all of the answers I got, I found 6 most common reasons that kind of I could group into categories, so kind of 6 categories of reasons why people explained that they are completionist collectors, or they have more completionist tendencies. These are in no particular order of frequency, it's just like the order that I was writing these down in. And the first one is liking the character even if the doll isn't the best. And I really do understand this. I can get where people are coming from with this. A lot of doll brands nowadays have associated media, so even back with Monster High, there was the Monster High show. There's been a ton of Barbie movies and Barbie shows. There was Ever After High, and now there's like the Rainbow High show. Even Mermaids has, or had, I don't know if they're still ongoing, but they had episodes. So a lot of doll brands do have a relating show or like some other type of media that you can connect to the character with. So if you like that media and you really enjoy that, you might really love the character, and then you end up not loving the doll quite so much, but there's like a very strong association there, right? Because you love the character, so even though the doll might not be your favorite, you want to buy it because you have a strong attachment to the character. And I definitely understand that one. I feel like I make a lot of associations, and I love a lot of things by association, so I can see where people who have that mindset are coming from. And if you watch a show and you like all the characters, it would make sense to me that you then want to be a completionist when it comes to collecting the dolls, because they represent the characters that you feel so fondly for. So that one was interesting. It might be one of the ones that I personally can connect to the most. Obviously, I'm not a completionist, but I definitely understand this mindset, and it wasn't something I had thought of. So again, I'm so glad that I asked you guys, because I never would have thought of that, but it makes perfect sense. Then we have a group of reasons involving the fact that dolls do tend to come in sets. So like with Rainbow High, for example, there's like Series 1 is a set, Series 2 is a set. So there's a couple different reasons that I kind of lumped together in this conglomerate group of reasons. The first being that the set looks good together, and that is what draws people in. I can understand that for sure, especially with lines like Rainbow High, where it is like a rainbow, like it's a very pleasing set of colors, to where you can gain joy from the dolls individually, but you gain like an extra level of joy because the set looks really pretty when it is complete on your shelf. And again, I can get that. I understand where if you look at it and it's a complete set of dolls, there's something appealing about that. There's something that is like an extra layer of displayability when you have the whole complete set. And then similar to that was the idea that you might like most of a set, so it's like you might as well complete it for the fact that it will then look good as a set. So if there's a series of 5 dolls that comes out and you like 4 of them, someone might buy the 5th one because at that point you're already planning on buying 4 because you genuinely love 4 of them, and you're like, well, I'd rather have the full set if I already like most of them. Again, something that does make sense to me. A lot of this does make sense. Like, when I asked you guys, it wasn't like I couldn't absorb this information or make sense of it. Again, it's not something that I feel like I'll end up putting into practice, but I can see the logic there. And then kind of rounding out the set, it is just that that is the sole appeal. So kind of like I said before, where getting the set is like an extra layer of appeal. For some people, that is the whole appeal, is having the set. And like having one doll wouldn't really bring them the same joy that having the complete set does. So it was just very interesting because I know I can get a lot of joy from one doll out of a set. So I can't relate personally, but it was interesting to hear that for some people, the whole point is having the set, and like that is the part that makes them happy. And again, if that's what makes you happy, that's super chill. Like, I'm not gonna judge you if that's what makes you happy, but it was just interesting because like my brain doesn't work that way. So it's fascinating to see how other people approach collecting. Then we had one that I think is insanely admirable, honestly, and that is the fact that some people genuinely find something to love with every doll, and that frankly boggles my mind. I do a lot of critique on this channel. I can be a very critical person. I think that's just part of how I engage in media. Like when I watch shows or movies or when I read, I like to be critical. Like that's part of the fun for me, is kind of being critical of things. And so because of that, I think it contributes to my pickiness with buying dolls, where once I hit like a certain threshold of not liking things about a doll, I don't like the doll overall, right? So it's so fascinating to me that there are people who genuinely love something about every single doll that a brand releases. And again, it's something that I honestly find insanely admirable, because I can't do that. And I love the idea that if you collect like this, if you feel that way, I love the idea that you have so much like joy in your heart that you can find something to be happy about with every doll. I hope that that makes sense, because I feel a little weird saying that. But it just seems so interesting to me and so wholesome that people who collect in this manner can find something to love about a doll. I think that's honestly so sweet. So props to you if you collect that way, because I feel like that's a very happy way to be. Okay, next up is that you want to see them for yourself and you kind of learn to love them after getting them out of box. And this is one that does make sense to me, because I countless times on this channel have unboxed a doll and found that I feel very differently about it. Like from seeing it online to then seeing it in person, and then seeing it in person to seeing it out of box. There's just a really different emotion, and sometimes you can completely switch up on how you feel about a doll. So sometimes people will buy the entire line and collect in a completionist mindset because they might feel differently upon unboxing it. So you might be like, well, I don't like this character, but I'm gonna buy the set, and when I unbox them, I might feel more strongly, or I might be able to feel more connected to the doll, or you might find new things about them that you couldn't really appreciate in box, but you can appreciate when they're out of box. And I feel so silly saying this, but this point actually made me think of arranged marriages, and I do want to say really quickly, there is a huge difference between a forced marriage and an arranged marriage. From what I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong, because this isn't something that's very common in my area, so like I very well could be wrong, but from what I understand, an arranged marriage is more like your parents have friends that have kids your age, and so they might conspire to be like, hey, this person might be a good match for you, and kind of set you up, but it's not, you have to marry this person, you are going to marry this person no matter what. That's a forced marriage. But like an arranged marriage is kind of like, almost like matchmaking, from what I understand. Again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I have spoken to people who live in cultures where arranged marriages are very common, and it's really interesting to hear from them, because I think the mindset is kind of that you learn to love that person, and maybe it's not, you know, the love at first sight, but through being with them, you kind of learn new things about this person, and you learn to love them, and you grow to love them, and there can be a really, really strong bond there, which I think is beautiful in its own way. And so that's kind of what this point made me think of, is the idea that you get a doll and you don't necessarily love them when they first come out or when you first buy them, but over time you see them on your shelf and you feel more connected to them. I don't know if that makes any sense. I feel like I sound a little bit crazy, but that's just what it made me think of, and I think it's kind of sweet. It kind of goes back to the idea of genuinely finding something to love with every doll, but I like the idea that people are completionists because they know that if they buy all of the dolls, they will grow on them. I don't know, again, it seems kind of wholesome to me. It's kind of cute. Okay, then we had the idea that people buy an entire set for pieces and to do clothing swaps, and almost to do like customs of, not necessarily customs in the sense of repainting the face or anything like that, but I thought this was so interesting that people will buy an entire set so that they can swap clothing, and it does make a lot of sense, because I might not buy a doll because I don't like the clothing, but if you're buying every doll that comes out, you're going to end up probably with a lot of extra clothing, or even some duplicate pieces, depending on whether you buy duplicate dolls. And so the idea that you buy every single doll in whatever brand or brands you are a completionist in, because you can then swap the clothing and have the clothing be shared amongst all the dolls to turn them all into something you like, I think is very creative and very fun. And again, that one makes a lot of sense to me, because it's like, maybe you don't like how it looks on the shelf, but you know that this doll comes with an extra outfit that this doll is going to look amazing in. And I feel like having the foresight to think that way is really cool. And it also means that you have a very like customized collection. You know, you don't have a big display of dolls all wearing their own clothes. And again, it's totally fine if that is how you collect. That's how I collect a lot of the time, is that my dolls wear the clothes that they came with. But I think it's really cool, the idea of buying every single doll so that you have just a ton of extra pieces and clothing so that you can make everything truly your own. And even if you don't like the doll as it comes stock, you know that you have the ability to turn it into something you love. It's very creative and very cool and very fun. So again, kind of something that I admire. And then lastly, two reasons that I kind of grouped together. The first one being FOMO, the fear of missing out. I did a whole video a while ago about FOMO because I was just going through a period where I was experiencing it very intensely, and it's still something that I struggle with. I think that most collectors struggle with FOMO at one point or another, because there's always so many releases coming out, and so it's hard to not feel like if I don't buy this doll now, I won't ever have the opportunity to buy this doll again. And that's like a scary feeling if you like the doll and if you like a whole bunch of dolls. So a lot of people will be completionists in their collections so that they know they aren't missing out, so that they know for sure if they change their mind later, they have the doll. It's not like they skipped out on it because they didn't like it and then they decided a year later that they love it and now they can't find it. And I do understand that. Obviously, I think that that is kind of a bigger discussion, like I said, a whole video on FOMO, because you don't want to do it, I feel, to the point where it's messing with your mental health. But like if you have the funds to do it and that is how it makes you feel comfortable to be a collector, you know, again, as long as you are taking care of yourself mentally, I don't see anything wrong with that. And then kind of similar that I grouped together with this was the idea of future value. Not necessarily the idea of I bought this doll and then in 20 years it's gonna be worth something. I know that a lot of people have parents who did that with like their 90s Barbie dolls, where you couldn't even open the Barbie because it was gonna be worth something, and now it's like most of them aren't. So not necessarily that, but more the idea that the secondhand market can fluctuate a lot and become very, very expensive very quickly. Easiest example is Monster High. Monster High right now is in a pretty high point in the secondhand market. A lot of the dolls are pretty expensive. So if you didn't buy a Gen 1 Monster High doll when they first came out, if you were collecting back then, now it's very expensive to get that same doll, and it's also a lot harder to find them in good condition and with all of their pieces. So some people are completionists to avoid that specifically. Not necessarily to resell later, although I'm sure people do that, and that is also fine. Like, if you're buying it and you think that you might end up selling it later, I'm not here to judge you for that either.
Just a point of clarification here. If you are buying a doll, like a collector Monster High doll, and you are buying it with the purpose to immediately flip it, or you are buying multiples with the intention to immediately flip it and charge an outrageous price to make a profit, I am judging you for that, and that is morally wrong to me. But if you are buying a doll with the thought that someday you might not want to keep it in your collection, and maybe you keep it in box so that you can get a return on your investment somewhere down the line, that I'm not judging you for. I do think that there is a huge difference between people who are resellers to make money and then people who happen to resell dolls that were in their collection and they just no longer feel attached to.
But people will buy it because they think that it might be hard to get later, in the sense that it might become very expensive later. And so they'd rather have a doll in their collection that they aren't obsessed with now, but that down the road they won't, again, change their mind and be like, oh, well, now this doll is $200 and I can't buy it. Bratz is another great example. A lot of Bratz dolls, secondhand, like from the first run of Bratz, are so expensive. And so some people are completionists to kind of avoid that feeling, which, again, I get it. I do feel like this whole group of reasons is a little bit more precarious. Again, not in a judgmental sense, but in the way that, like, if you do collect this way, please make sure you are taking care of your mental health, because I personally feel like that would be kind of exhausting for me to be constantly in this loop of, oh, I have to buy this, like, stuck in the fear. If that's not how you feel, that is absolutely dandy. But if you feel that way, please take care of yourself. But yeah, I can understand where this one comes from. So that is going to be all of the reasons that you guys submitted for why some of you are completionist collectors. This was a very interesting video to me because I kind of went into it thinking that I wouldn't be able to understand because, again, that's not how I collect, and so I thought it would be a lot harder for me to get why people do that, but most of these reasons made sense to me. Even if it's not something that I personally feel, I could understand why people feel that way or why people collect in that way, so it was just very interesting to kind of bridge the gap, I guess, and see that it's not so much a difference as maybe I thought it was. And again, a lot of these reasons are honestly, to me, kind of awesome reasons, like the idea that you genuinely love something about each doll, or you know you can turn a doll into something you like. I think these are really, really wholesome reasons to be a completionist collector and not necessarily things that I would have thought of going into this. So again, a huge thank you to all of you who answered and shared this insight with me because it was really interesting and very helpful. And yeah, I had fun with this. It was fun to kind of learn more about why people collect differently than I do. So if you are like me, if you're one of the people who responded and you are not a completionist, I hope that this video was fun for you. I hope that it also gave you a little bit of insight. If you did like the video, if you could give it a like, that would be very, very helpful. And then also, if you are a completionist and I didn't cover one of the reasons why you collect that way, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. I probably won't make a part 2 because I feel like I probably didn't miss that many reasons, right? But yeah, I would love to continue the conversation down below, and don't forget to ask questions if you have any questions for the upcoming Q&A. But I think that is all we have to say today. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day or your night or whatever it might be. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.